We all knew that the Big Ten was better than the SEC, but now it's not even close.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
That is right. It is a crossover episode to talk about Big Ten football and how the Big Ten is much better than the SEC. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. He is Jacob Goins, the host of Locked On Hoosiers. Congratulations to Indiana for winning a national championship. And we're going to break a ton of things down in this show, evaluating Penn State and Indiana's portal classes for next season, get into the nuts and bolts, early thoughts for 2026, because is Indiana the team to beat now that they are the defending national champ? But we got to begin with how the Big Ten is definitively the best conference. Jacob, there's no debate anymore. You could say, well, the SEC, they're pretty deep. It's not just about the three-peat that the Big Ten has put together between Indiana, Ohio State, and, well, Michigan. How much weight do we put in that one? But it's still a three-peat for the Big Ten Conference. Mm-hmm. It's also the fact that the SEC was downright the worst conference when it came to bowl season this year. So it's not just focusing on the national titles, let alone the SEC hasn't had a representative in a national title since 2022 with Georgia. SEC is down bad. The gap is widening between the Big Ten and the SEC. I would also start to argue that, hey, maybe the Big 12 and the SEC or the ACC are starting to gain a little ground there on the SEC. I'd be worried if I were them.
Yeah, I mean they're clearly not happy about it, right? They are voicing their opinion and the fact that they are being left behind, really, in today's era of college football, because it's an even playing field. It's level across the board because a team like Indiana can go and win a national championship, and they cannot stand it. If it had been Ohio State that had won, or even Oregon, who had won the national championship,
wouldn't have this discussion at all.
Right. They would be mad about it because it's the Big Ten, but they wouldn't be up in arms because that's one of the teams that was supposed to win it all. They're a big brand in college football. Then there's Indiana, who walks in and has done something that most SEC teams haven't done recently or haven't even done at all. I mean, you're looking at the Southeastern Conference. Their last man standing was Ole Miss, a team that didn't have a head coach, who had to promote one of their coordinators because their coach left for another SEC team. I mean, they are picking themselves apart. They don't know how to handle other conferences and other teams having success, and they better figure it out. Because I'm with you. The Big Ten's only getting better. The Big 12 is really, really good. And if the ACC figures it out, other than Miami, the SEC may not have but one or two representatives in the college football playoff next year.
And that's why I'm so interested in the fact that the SEC isn't on board. It's the Big Ten that's pushing the 24-team playoff, right? The SEC is like, no, maybe we don't want that many teams there. We're going to have that discussion plenty, of course. But there's little to no evidence that the SEC isn't falling behind at this point. It's the three-peat. It's not only the fact that the Big Ten continues to win national titles, it's that the SEC is nowhere to be found. It's not like Ohio State defeated a Georgia or a Texas or an Alabama or an LSU. It's the fact that they're not even in the game. They don't even make it to the end. And then the argument has always been, well, the SEC, it's the deepest conference. And you know what? I subscribe to that belief in the middle of the season. We've had this debate beforehand, but now evidence kind of changes my perception with all of this. That was an awful performance. Other than a team like Texas, right? They beat Michigan. Well, that's a Michigan team that's going through a little bit of a change with a head coaching surge and guys entering the portal, and Texas is retaining most of its players. So they should win that game, right? It's the fact that you have Vanderbilt, right, losing to Iowa. You have Alabama getting blown out, not even a prayer against Indiana. These are the data points that we now have that, it's not this just didn't go the SEC's way. They lost all the consequential bowl matchups. They had a couple of wins, and one of them actually comes in the form of an SEC team beating another SEC team. So it was Texas and Ole Miss, and that's it.
Yeah, and I think, too, Zach, look at the recruiting. Look at the transfer portal. Look at the players that are just going all over the place. The ones that are going to the Big Ten, they're going to the Big 12. And yes, the money idea has a lot to do with this. And I'm excluding a place like Texas Tech, who is an outlier here because they're just buying their way to a competitive football team. But look at a place like Penn State, who has a new head coach. Look at a place like Indiana, a place like Michigan State with a new head coach. Like, players are going to these schools and they want to be there. And the SEC doesn't have the stranglehold that it once did. They can't walk in and put their SEC logo on the table and say, this is why you should come to us, and that's why it works. They don't have that anymore. And you're seeing the competitive balance, even within the SEC itself, start to come back to level playing field. And again, they can't stand it. They don't know what to do. And if it's not Alabama, Georgia, or Texas, they just have nobody behind them. I guess Ole Miss was this year, but banking on Lane Kiffin at LSU in year one to win them a national championship. That's not really where I'd want to put my money, man.
Every spot this postseason. Okay. I also should have given credit to Alabama, right? Because they also beat Oklahoma. So that was an SEC bowl game win. You had Ole Miss beating Tulane. They beat Tulane. Congratulations. They also beat Georgia, but every other consequential game, Texas A&M went down. Missouri went down. LSU, well, they're going through a coaching change. Okay, I feel like you should be able to beat Houston, right?
Yeah.
Surely you can beat Houston. You're better than the Big 12, right? Houston wins. Illinois beats Tennessee. Texas gets that win against Michigan, right? Iowa beating Vanderbilt. And you make a great point about how this is where I want to conclude segment one. I want to go back to your original point that Indiana rises to the ranks. Defies all the odds. Most people had this team, including myself. I'm not afraid to admit it, but 8-4, 9-3 around. That was the ballpark. That was general. Hey, maybe they get to 10-2. Okay. And they get back into the playoff. I saw that as their ceiling. Never did I see an undefeated season in a national championship. We can all, for the most part, agree on that. But it's the fact that the SEC will never have something like that.
No.
Okay. The Big Ten can produce a team like this. When is Vanderbilt going to do something like that? Would Mississippi State be able to do something like that? We're a team that's in the lower half of the conference for years and years and years, just all of a sudden rise to the top. I can't project that for any team in the SEC. It's always the heavy hitters of basically Georgia, Alabama. Okay, you had Ole Miss, but can they sustain that? Texas and Oklahoma, they're not really making a move. Basically, it's Georgia runs the conference, and then everybody else kind of beats up on each other. And well, that's the argument of why the SEC is so deep. Okay, well then you would have proved it in the bowl games. You didn't win any that were consequential.
Yeah.
Again, you will never see one of those teams that are in the low half of that conference ascend to the top and defy all the odds, which makes Indiana in the Big Ten more impressive.
Yeah, Vanderbilt got close, right? I mean, they won some games and had Diego Pavia and things like that, but they didn't. They were never a title.
They were never a title contender, though.
No, exactly. That's the difference. Is they had a team who found some good players and found a good quarterback and made it happen, but they were never going to win a national championship. Not even close. Indiana would have beaten them by 4 touchdowns, and so that's the difference. Is the Big Ten can produce other winners not named Ohio State and Michigan, and they proved it this year with Indiana.
Now, Indiana being undefeated, right? Steve Sarkisian, SEC head coach, that we'll never see an undefeated team in college football ever again with the expanded playoff and the extended schedule. It happened. So, and look how quickly it happened too. So does that make Indiana the team to beat? Curt Cignetti could argue that he's definitively the best coach in college football. I say they're the team to beat in 2026. That is coming up next here on this Locked On Crossover. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like the most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts that you want to apply. The boost will let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then apply your profit boosts to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Once again, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions and Locked On Hoosiers your first listen and watch every single day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network out there. If you haven't already, go check out the all-new Everydayer Club. What is the Everydayer Club? If you sign up for Locked On Nittany Lions or Locked On Hoosiers, you will get access to an ad-free audio feed for each of these shows, compatible with Apple, Spotify, and every other major podcasting app. You also get an invite to a members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. Go to LockedOnNittanyLions.supercast.com, go to LockedOnHoosiers.supercast.com, or tap the link in the show notes to learn more about the all-new Everydayer Club. In my opinion, Indiana's the team to beat. Jacob, I imagine you're going to agree. But this is also for a chance to, for us to debate some of these way too early top 25s that are coming out. You're right. College football never sleeps. And I like that we can have these conversations just after the season concludes in the latter part of January. But it also brings into the, what about Oregon? What about Ohio State? There are a lot of Big Ten teams that are going to vie for a national championship. And that's where we can also debate, hey, the SEC. ESPN has Indiana ranked #1 in their way too early top 25, which I agree with as the defending national champion. But for the sake of the debate, I like that some of these other rankings have a little bit of projection to them, a little bit of nuance. I've seen Indiana as low as 8. I've seen them shuffled around the top 5 because I don't know that they are the #1 team on paper going into next season. But we also saw just how much that matters. Penn State was #2. This past season. I don't like talking about that. But they were the #2 team. Texas was a top 3 team, right? And they one by one, all these teams that were projected to be even better and be serious title contenders, LSU, Clemson, Penn State, Texas, all folded. They all disappeared. So Indiana, even though they might not be the #1 team on paper, they are the team to beat because it's proven until otherwise. They won the national title. Curt Cignetti's coming back, and they reloaded in the portal, which we'll talk about more in segment 3.
I think Indiana is the program to beat. I don't know if the 2026 Indiana football team is the team to beat because we simply don't know, right? We don't know what Indiana's going to look like. We don't know what Penn State's going to look like. We don't know what Oregon's going to look like. We have an idea, right? We have an idea of the players that are coming back, the players who are coming in through the portal, and the high school recruiting rankings. Indiana's going to be just fine, but you're bringing in several new pieces through the portal, including a new quarterback, new running back, new offensive lineman, new defensive lineman, new secondary guys. You're bringing in a lot of new names.
But didn't that just happen? And Indiana won a title.
It did, to an extent. You brought in a new quarterback and they won a title. You brought in a new running back and they won a title. You brought a new offensive lineman and they won a title. Okay. But you had a lot of returning guys who had been there with Cignetti for several years from James Madison and then Indiana for a couple of years. You're losing several of those guys from this year's team going into next year. So to say that there will be little to no drop-off would be foolish, I think. But I do have confidence in Curt Cignetti and the coaching staff that's staying together and the portal guys that you're bringing in that Indiana can be one of the best teams in the Big Ten. But in terms of all these, preseason top 25s and things, I mean, they're opinion pieces. That's what they are. This is people giving their opinion, projecting what they think is going to happen.
You have no idea.
7 months from now. It's like, man, we don't know. These guys haven't even hit the practice field together yet. So I think Indiana will be the program to beat because the name, the logo, the head coach, and now defending national champions. But we simply don't know what Indiana's going to be. And then, Zach, we don't know for teams like Penn State, right, who are brand spanking new coach, new team and everything. Maybe they're a dark horse to pop up and be a competitor next year.
We would love to see that, right? We would very much like to see that. ESPN not giving them as much credit. They're in the 20s. On3 has them in the top 15. They're actually number 14. There's so many. You Google way too early, top 25, pick one, and it's not going to even look remotely the same, right? ESPN has Indiana #1. CBS has Ohio State #1. You look at somewhere, Yahoo has, Penn State ranked 18th, for example. Sports Illustrated has Ohio State number 1. So I imagine if you go through all the rankings and build a consensus, that we'll probably be able to have that conversation in due time. I think we can figure out what kind of like the AP poll, basically take all of the rankings and then do an average of where everybody lands. The New York Times, the New York Times has Oregon as number 1. So now let's start to debate that. Some of the early contenders, because if you're an early contender, I know it doesn't mean anything. And honestly, you have a target on your back, which makes you more susceptible to some of those nasty losses. But I don't think that's going to happen again. I think it was more relative to 2025 because Penn State was in a unique situation where they had the talent, but changes in coordinators, with Jim Knowles and not everybody fitting in different systems. And then the portal acquisitions didn't all materialize. I look at teams that have consistency. And that's why Indiana won this national championship. They had consistency, which you pointed out. Guys that played for Curt Cignetti for a while. They weren't a lot of plug and play free agents, if you will. And you had the consistency and the continuity with coordinators. Okay. So I look at Notre Dame, Ohio State, Oregon. See, Oregon is changing, is losing both of its coordinators. So that might be a situation where, you think they're a title contender. You don't know how their coordinators are going to play out. You don't know that situation, but look at Notre Dame, returning starting quarterback. Look at and coordinators. Look at Ohio State with returning coordinators, returning quarterback, returning star players. So that's where you want to start to pinpoint and say, okay, these guys are legitimate. Texas, for example, Arch Manning comes back. So start with the quarterback, start with the coordinators, and you can start to figure out who's going to be those lead teams going into next season.
Yeah, I think it's a great formula. I do. I think it's not that simple, but the way you said it's a good place to start, right? That's a great place to start where, who has the most continuity, who has the most experience, who has the most confidence in themselves to go and be competitive. And, you can start diving into schedules and things like that and portal rankings versus recruiting rankings and whatever the case may be. I think we should have a retainment rankings too. I think that'd be fascinating. But I think all those things put together, I think the Big Ten is still going to be the best at the top, right? I think Ohio State's up there, Oregon's up there, Indiana's up there, a couple of those dark horses as well. SEC, Georgia will be there. You expect Alabama to try and get back there, but got to see what they do with Kalen DeBoer. LSU with Lane Kiffin in year 1, who knows? Can Ole Miss get back there? Who knows? Texas, can they make something? Who knows? Then you start looking at the Big 12, the ACC. All those conferences are going to have some teams. I just don't think anybody's going to have the dominance at the top like the Big Ten does. And I think Indiana leads the charge, at least to start the season. And then we'll find out just several weeks into the year on which conference is legit, which teams are legit, which ones struggle out of the gate, and which ones pick right back up where they left off.
And that's where the transfer portal plays into a lot of that, right? Miami makes great additions in the transfer portal. Indiana makes great additions in the transfer portal. There's a lot of projection that goes into it, but starting with the consistency, the continuity, the coordinators, the quarterbacks, those are the most important positions when we're talking about personnel. And then you look at, roster retention, as you mentioned. Retention is going to be huge because they help bridge the gap for the new guys, the newbies. Coming in. If most of your team is familiar with the offense, with the defense, and that's why I like Penn State a ton to be kind of what Indiana was in year 1 under Curt Cignetti. Favorable schedule. Go look at Penn State's schedule. You and I could probably put a roster together of Locked On hosts and probably go 7-5 and 8-4. I'm kidding. I am kidding. But when you look at Penn State's schedule, you say, the Nittany Lions should get to the playoffs, right? And you bring over Matt Campbell, but it's not all this unfamiliarity. You're bringing most of the guys that played in his system this past season. So I kind of like what Penn State's doing as far as following the Curt Cignetti blueprint, so to speak, in a way.
Right.
This is why we are where we are in college football and why we had significant turnover. Coaches were getting fired left and right because of Curt Cignetti and Indiana. And that's why I think they're the team to beat in 2026, because they have shattered the narrative that you have to spend a ton of money. You have to be a somebody. You can't overcome expectations that nobody would have thought Indiana was going to win a national title in the next 10, 15, 20 years. Give Curt Cignetti an unlimited amount of time. That is why we are where we are, and why Indiana, because they're the team that blew everything up. They're the program that shattered the narrative in college football.
Good. And I hope it sticks.
Great.
I hope it stays. I hope it builds. I hope other teams find similar success, and that we can hopefully bring all of this back down to reality, where it doesn't have to be this just crapshoot of portal and NIL and all this mess. I mean, our sport's in such a bad spot, and it's even worse in some other sports too, but college football's got to be fixed. And I hope Indiana winning a national title can kind of bring all this back down to earth.
Penn State, Indiana have positioned themselves to be competitive, much above what most people would put on them in terms of expectations for 2026. So how did they do in the portal? Well, we got a Penn State expert. We got an Indiana expert here to talk about it, coming up next here on this Locked On Crossover. This episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever just to hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the guesswork or the stress. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect with them online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get you every single deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling all of it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150. That's right, $150 all in if a TurboTax expert did not file for you last year. All you got to do is file by February 28th. Take taxes off of your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. If you look at the rankings, Penn State's got one of the best portal classes in the entire nation. So does Indiana, right? And that's why I say Indiana's in a position to sustain this kind of success where they're going to be relevant. What that relevancy looks like, college football playoff contender as far as getting into the bracket as an at-large, maybe able to win at least a game or two. I don't know if they're a title contender year in and year out. Kind of the same thing with Penn State. I feel like you and I can relate on a lot of elements here, because that's what I expect for Penn State and Matt Campbell, is that you're going to be able to recruit well. You're going to be able to hit the portal where you need to and always be relevant. Are you going to have a bad season, and bad by our standards, right? It's 8-4, something that's disappointing.
Sure.
Yes, probably at some point in time. But it's the fact that, Penn State might be 3-9. Indiana might be 3-9. No, never. So welcome to the club of having expectations and living up to those expectations that you will always be relevant year in and year out. It's nice up here. And it starts with the portal classes. I like Penn State's portal class, obviously, because there are a lot of Iowa State players that come over that are capable, that are talented. This idea, when people dunk on Penn State and say, well, you're just the Penn State Nittany Cyclones. Okay, it's dismissing the fact of who they actually got from Iowa State. You got a starting quarterback. You got a starting running back. You got 2 starting wide receivers. You got 2 starting tight ends. You got a starting offensive lineman. You got a starting defensive lineman. You got starting linebackers. You got 3 starting caliber defensive backs. And some of those guys aren't just, hey, they're capable starters. They hold their own. They're all conference caliber, not only in the Big 12, but in the Big 10. So that's why I like Penn State's portal class. I'm a little disappointed with the players that are not affiliated with Iowa State, not affiliated with Penn State. They still got former Ohio State running back James Peoples, but there really wasn't that other splash commitment. And I think it's because Penn State had a ton of players that they retained, but also 20-plus capable Iowa State players as well, that if you're going to miss in this category, it's understandable. Still not ideal.
Yeah, and in year one, I mean, you want a lot of guys in the room that understand the situation. They understand the standards. They understand the day in, day out of Matt Campbell. However much of the coaching staff came with him, I know a lot. You want guys in that room and in the locker room and in the building that understand what those expectations are. And it's not going to be like that all the time. This is the first, you see it all over the place. Look at LSU. Look at all the different guys that are coming in there from Ole Miss and recruiting classes. Look at, you know, Alex Golis going from South Florida to Auburn. Look at North Texas to Oklahoma State. I mean, it happens everywhere. When a new coach takes a new job, he brings a lot of the people with him. And it won't be like that forever. But fans sometimes forget that you've got to yield a team. You've got to have enough players to play big time football coming up in just a few months. And so, no, for Penn State, I think you guys will be just fine. You go and get several starters, like you said. You bring in a ton of talent. And I like Matt Campbell. I do. I like the hire. I like the guy. He's been a winner pretty much his whole life. And so I think that'll be good for Penn State. For Indiana on the other side, it is basically just replace what you're losing, which sounds simplistic and it sounds elementary, but that's pretty much what you're doing. You're losing a starting quarterback. You go get a starting quarterback and Josh Hoover from TCU. You're losing both of your starting running backs. You've brought in one. I'd like to see another one, but Turbo Richard coming in from Boston College, really like him. You're losing at least Elijah Surratt in the receiver room. All right, cool. So you go get Nick Marsh from Michigan State.
I was going to say, you should have started with Nick Marsh. That was, I said last season going into this year objectively, and again, that's why quarterbacks matter, scheme matters. Nick Marsh, from a talent standpoint, is the next best wide receiver after Jeremiah Smith.
He's that good. He's that talented. And in that Indiana offense, he should flourish. Josh Hoover, an incredible quarterback, a little turnover prone, but if he can get that cleaned up, he's
give him better receivers, give him better coaches, and watch what that's Fernando Mendoza. You saw the vision at Cal, but what if we upgrade his supporting cast? So I can see, I don't think Josh Hoover is going to be QB1, win a Heisman, right? Those are lofty expectations. That's a really high bar to reach. But being a top 5 quarterback in the Big Ten, I think that's very doable and should be the expectation when you have Nick Marsh, a bona fide number 1 wide receiver. And then, Marsh, look at his stats at Michigan State. Really? Michigan State? Again, revolving door at quarterback, Jonathan Smith. Come on. Marsh is much better than advertised. That was when I saw that move happen. And then you get AJ Harris, right? Capable cornerback from Penn State who just needs to play more man coverage. I still think he's a great ball player and certainly a day 2 NFL draft pick caliber type of cornerback, but didn't fit into Knowles' defense, didn't fit into his system very well. Settle him down, get him back to what he does best. And Indiana wasn't getting those players originally. They were getting James Madison holdovers, leftovers, guys who were loyal to Curt Cignetti. And look what happens. Winning cures all. And now Nick Marsh he jumps at the chance to go play at Indiana. Hoover jumps at the chance to go play at Indiana. AJ Harris, other transfers as well. That's the difference now, is that Curt Cignetti doesn't have to pull from a former team, a former program. He's going and getting the best names because they want to be in Bloomington.
From other P4 programs. And that's the big difference here. That's the step up that Indiana has taken. And it's become a destination place. It's become a place that people want to be a part of. They want to be there. They want to play there. They want to get better there. And now they have proof that they can go win championships. And so, you bring in all those guys on offense. You mentioned AJ Harris defensively. Indiana might have some of the best edge rushers in the country next season. Several dudes from Kansas State, Josh Burnham from Notre Dame. I mean, this team is going to be nasty next year, plus the guys that you bring back for another year or two. So, Indiana's roster is going to be just fine. The coaching staff isn't going anywhere. So, I think Indiana is going to be one of the teams to beat in 2026 for sure.
And that is where we're going to wrap things up on this edition, on this Locked On crossover. He is Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. My name is Zach Seyko of Locked On Nittany Lions. Hey, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments section. Be a part of the conversation. If you are new to our shows, if you're new, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you so much for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network out there. Without your help, we wouldn't be able to do that. So thank you. Jacob, thank you for joining me on another Big Ten crossover episode to look at the conference, look at the full perspective of what Penn State and Indiana is dealing with. It's always great to chat with you and can't wait to do it again next week.
Yes, sir. Enjoyed it as always.